I am Jo. Thank you very much for that. And I'm going to cover our campaign around food justice. And hopefully, if I do a few clicks, I've got a presentation for you. And where better place to start than Marcus Rashford? You either like him because you're a Man U fan, or because he's finally brought the issue of food justice to the mainstream by speaking out on free school meals. And congratulations on the MBE as well for that work that you've been doing. As a party, we started campaigning on food justice over a year ago. We saw some of those underlying issues before the pandemic, but what has happened during COVID, it's brought this issue to the fore. We can see that injustice all around us. So some of the stats though are absolutely frightening. Just to run through those, a lot of people are facing this issue for the first time. Trussell Trust reckon that 50% of people have started to use their food banks during the pandemic, and they hadn't had to use them before. And we know families are the hardest hit. 2 in 5 households are needing to use a food bank at some point. We reckon that 8 million people in the UK are having trouble putting good, nutritious food on the table. And as part of that, we reckon around 1 million people are living in food deserts, where they're struggling to get access to good, accessible, healthy food as well. And if we look at some of the underlying issues for that, you just need to look at the stats. In areas hit by universal credit, food bank use has risen by 52%. Indeed, it's cited as one of the most common causes of people going to food banks is just that simple lack of money to buy food. And universal credit has a lot to answer for that. And in particular, the wait around the 5-week wait that people are having to have, but also sort of changes in circumstances, changing in benefits, is really putting people on the breadline with regards to that. Which is why we need national action. And Marcus Rashford has put together a child food poverty task force, includes the Co-op, you'll be pleased to know, and other big retailers as well, to put some asks to government. And they mark it as a unifying step to identify a long-term solution to child poverty in the UK. And they have 3 very clear asks of government that they think will make the biggest difference around this issue. The first one is that we should expand free school meals to every child on universal credit, opening that up to 1.5 million children. But also actually we expand that provision during the school holidays as well, because those problems don't go away when the children are on holiday. Actually, that support needs to be there for families all year round. So an expansion of that holiday food and activities that are currently available to all children as well. The third one is around increasing the value of Healthy Start vouchers. If you don't know what these are vouchers for parents with children under the age of 4 and pregnant women as well, to buy basic foods like milk and veg and things like that. And they're worth around £3.10 a week. Increasing that value to families would increase the amount of nutritious food that they could get as well. And actually by expanding that scheme as well, more people could get access to it. If you want to know more about Healthy Start vouchers, you can actually go online and find out the take up of those vouchers in your area. And I know some Labour and Co-op councillors have been running campaigns to increase the take up of those vouchers amongst people who should be entitled to them and should be using them. I have to say on this one, a big credit to East of England Co-op, who've already started adding Healthy Start voucher top-ups at the till. So if somebody with a Healthy Start voucher goes and shops in an East of England Co-op, then they will get £4.25 instead of £3.10 that's on the voucher. So they are topping up themselves and already honouring that commitment to £4.25 a week. Just in terms of that holiday hunger, an issue that we've also been campaigning on during the pandemic is around a guaranteeing of free school meals for pupils that are self-isolating. If you're around schools at the moment, you'll know that quite a few bubbles are being sent home for a few weeks to self-isolate because of cases in and around schools. And the current guidance means they aren't guaranteed to receive those free school meals if they're sent home, again forcing families into very difficult situations, but often at short notice as well. So we've been running a petition, some of our councillors have written around this, and actually some local areas have committed to providing free school meals. So in Bury, for example, their council is providing free school meals for self-isolating pupils. And you'll be pleased to know where we are in government in Wales, the Welsh government has already provided that guarantee as well. But we want to see some national action on that as well, to make sure that no kids are going hungry if they're not at school for whatever reason. But we are cooperators, and we believe in local action. And this is where I, as the local government officer, get to support the fantastic councillors all across the country who've been doing amazing work during the pandemic and really raising this issue, campaigning about this issue, but also being out there taking practical action, helping to feed families as well. And we've heard over the weekend some fantastic examples. So Joanna West, who got her award yesterday, was working in Central England Co-op, where they created a community hub for those people that couldn't leave their home. You also heard about Kemi as well, who's part of the Independent Food Network and the CEO of Brixton's People's Kitchen and Be Enriched charity. They've been doing amazing work, but also really excited by their double-decker bus that they're planning to put into use that brings food into areas of low income or low access to shops. It's also got Wi-Fi as well, so they're tackling those food deserts as well as that digital poverty too. And other great examples in Bristol, Feeding Bristol, they reckon they delivered 221,000 meals through the lockdown, and have really been also highlighting that not all communities affected equally, and it has been affected some of our BME communities in particular. So some fantastic work across the country. And that's where I want to focus on, because actually at that local, we can make a difference. And we know that three things in particular can make that difference at that local level. We are asking local councils basically to do three things, because even though solutions may be different for different places, actually we know this framework will help bring about real local action and get things moving to tackle this issue. So we recommend that there should be a food champion, someone within the council whose role it is to champion food poverty. And that can be a cabinet member, but may even be the leader of the council, somebody who can champion this issue. We also recommend that councils set up a food partnership to bring together all the people in the area that are working on this issue. It can be food banks, it can be retailers, it can be your guerrilla gardeners, it can be your allotment holders, but to bring those people together in a spirit of cooperation to look at how they can work together and work better and generate those ideas. And then thirdly, we're asking them to have a food action plan, something written down about what they want to do with regards to that. So actually we can see some real action on the ground. You'll be pleased to know there's a lot in there. We've put together a guide for you in terms of how you can do that. And hopefully my colleagues will put that link also into the Q&A box as well. You can now download that. And we go through those actions that were recommended for councils, how you can start to build that campaign, how you can work with the co-op movement. There are lots of opportunities to work with people like member pioneers on this really important issue. We've already seen some action in Scotland and Wales in particular, and there are some people able to engage with the national governments there. We've also got some of that amazing best practice. You can read some of those stories, but also a model motion as well. And we're encouraging people to take that motion forward into their councils. And I just want to share some of those councillors who are already doing that and already hitting the news for bringing about that action. So you'll see there, we've got Jack, who also got an award yesterday in Suffolk, who's got his council, which is Tory controlled, to sign up to a food justice action plan. There's moves from Sue in Devon to get her councillor to do the same, but also Kirsten there in West Lothian as well. And quite interesting, you don't have to be a councillor in power to deliver this. Actually, you can achieve a lot by opposition, by making the argument around this and really putting that forward. Also, it works at all different levels of local government. So you may have heard earlier about from Liam Byrne around his vision around West Midlands and a food partnership, but actually you can do just as much at that district, town, parish level as well, by having those three actions in terms of getting a champion, having a partnership and a plan. You can scale up or scale down your ambitions for your area in terms of tackling this issue. So that brings me to sort of the end of the presentation. I know people have been posting in the Slido there in the Q&A, and if you want to share your thoughts, your comments or any questions, please do. We want to hear about your campaigning across the country as well. So the first one I can see is around, do you think the answer to holiday hunger and child food poverty is cash rather than vouchers? And I think that's a really important point. At the heart of this, it's about people not having enough money to purchase food and good nutritious food. So absolutely increasing the amount of money that people get in their pocket absolutely helps this issue. And I think we all need to be very aware of some of the changes around universal credit, and in particular what is going to happen when the top up potentially comes off next year, when people will then again on benefits see less money coming into their household, where actually the situation may not have improved. But also it's why I highlight the issue of universal credit anyway, and some of those changes and people just not getting the money through as well. And I think, Lisa, you've kind of put some of those concerns as well. Is it a worry that the government will use the free school food voucher scheme as an excuse to to make more cuts to universal credit? And I think that is a big worry. And actually, if we go back to what the task force is looking for, they're talking about universal free school meals, which would mean that every child would have a guarantee around free school meals as well. And Carol, your question, when we talk about food justice, to what extent is it an issue with poverty? Are the answers as much about tackling issues with universal credit and low pay? Absolutely. I think I've touched on that as the heart of the issue, but also I think as cooperators, we see that local action. So whilst there's the national task force and there are national asks, actually there are things we can do now. We can take that local action now. So we can encourage our local councils to do things, to put plans in place to try and alleviate that as well. So I think it's probably a parallel approach on this campaign, but I think as cooperators, we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that we can take action now. And I know that loads of co-op members and councillors have been so involved during the pandemic in terms of being involved with food banks, delivering parcels, making sure their neighbours are doing all right. And I think that's a really, really important point that we don't want to lose. I think we heard that from Steve Reed earlier, you know, that that sense of community cooperation has been so important, and we absolutely shouldn't lose that degree of action that we've been taken. Just looking through a few more of the comments. Our local food cooperative has had to reduce its frequency from once a week to 2. This is because volunteers who worked on furlough are dropping away. This is likely to be a growing phenomenon. What do you think can be done? I think that's a really important point, Duncan, in terms of a lot of this is run by volunteers, a lot of people giving a lot of good time to make things happen locally. And indeed, I'm involved with a local food bank, and we lost some amazing volunteers because they went back to work. They were working an awful lot for us while they're on furlough or on shortened hours, but obviously people are starting to go back to work. I have to say I'm optimistic. I think people are able to reach out. So we've been able to get a lot of young people to come and volunteer with us. It's good experience for young people to be involved, but also they're looking for opportunities as well. So I think it is a challenge, but also it's an opportunity as well. And maybe this is something for co-op members. You know, we do suggest you go out and find out about your local food networks and your local food banks, and see how you can help as a local branch or a local party as well, because we can all play a part in that. I'd also suggest, and we put it in the guide, about linking up with your local co-op as well. Real opportunities to sort of publicise the fact that you're after volunteers. They have a platform called Co-operate, the co-op group. You can actually put your group on there, and you can look for volunteers as part of that Co-operate platform as well. So I think there's lots of opportunities, but you're right, it is a constant issue as people's circumstances change in trying to find those volunteers. Joanna, hi, good to hear that you're listening. In terms of, you have a comment rather than a question around food co-ops give more flexibility to people to choose their own items and potentially be able to budget for their shopping just with some financial help. It enables people to retain control. And I think that's a really important point. We see all sorts of different types. I know we talk about food banks, but I know there are things like community pantries and food co-ops as well. People doing what the cooperators did hundreds of years ago in terms of coming together and trying to find the solutions for themselves, and having a food co-op that people are part of, where they can choose their food at affordable prices, absolutely goes to the heart of who we are. And there's some really good examples of those across the country. And I know a lot of groups that set up during COVID are starting to look at that cooperative model in terms of going forward. How can we sustain these community and food sort of networks that have been built up? Actually, there's an opportunity for them to come together in a more formal and cooperative sense, and really put our principles into practice. I've got a comment from Judy. Thank you very much. And it's around Chelmsford Star. It's always good to hear from the co-op societies about what they've been doing. So Chelmsford Star have been donating food and finance to the food banks across its region. The delivery vehicles and drivers from the furniture department were used to deliver the food to where it was needed. A really great example there of just how during the pandemic everybody came together, and actually you know, in local government we were able to achieve things really quite fast. Things that take us months and months and months to do happened overnight, and we were able to put those support systems in for people at very short notice. And it's great to hear Chelmsford Star played their part in that as well. Just from Isabella, a comment around supporting communities to grow their own collectively using polytunnels can alleviate hunger too. And I think that's really important. I kind of touched on that in terms of the local action plan. We believe in things being from the grassroots up. So the plan will look different in different places, depending on the local needs, but the local resources as well. And actually there's some really good examples across the country. And also there's the project Incredible Edible. If you've not heard of them, go and Google it, have a look at the incredible work that they're doing about people growing their own food to help with the hunger and food issue as well. I think that's it's a really great idea, and there's loads of groups across the country already doing that. And indeed in some of our cities, there's that idea of finding plots of land where people can grow their food in what would otherwise be sort of deserts of good nutritious food as well. So it's a really great idea. Have a look at our guide, there's some good examples in there, but also have a Google of the Incredible Edible as well, a great project that is doing that all over the country. Charlie asks, is there scope in local areas to recruit more food bank volunteers from all the COVID-19 mutual groups that have been set up across the UK? Absolutely. I know some of our volunteers signed up for the NHS app right at the beginning and didn't get called upon, and they were really keen to come and do something. So it's very hard to get access you can't get access to that sort of that bank of volunteers, but actually if you promote locally, there are lots of people who signed up for the NHS sort of volunteers that want to do something and they want to help as well. I think that spirit is still very much there. People want to carry on doing that, and yeah, and I think it's just a case of going out there and trying to find them as well. I can just see on the comments, Elizabeth is talking about her local ward. She has the food pantry, which is set up in Peabody. Again, another great example all over the place of really good community projects that have all come together. I think that's pretty much all the questions we've had through. I hope that was a sort of a useful quick tour through the issue of food justice. It's very hard to do it in such a short amount of time, but I hope we've touched upon the key things, but most importantly, how you can get involved as a Co-op Party member. And it's that key thing we're asking at that local level. Find out if your local council has a food champion, if it has a local action plan, if it has a food partnership, and if it doesn't, start organising for one. If you've got local co-op councillors, then you can put forward a motion, you can write to the leader of the council and actually ask for those 3 things that we know makes a difference for food justice at that local level. Now I'm going to hand over to my colleague James Butler, and he's going to talk about something a little bit different. He's going to talk about our Love It, List It campaign. So over to you, James.